Well, I'm just so excited to dig really deep on this spiritual warfare and recovery. Dayne, in our previous episode, we touched on the experience that you had when the doctors diagnosed you with bipolar, but you mentioned believing it was partially a spiritual battle. Welcome to Warfare Parenting, faith-driven strategies for struggling parents of teens and adult children. I'm your host, Laine Lawson Craft. You're in the right place if you're battling with prodigal children, facing family crises, or seeking spiritual guidance in parenting. Today, we'll equip you with powerful biblical strategies to reclaim your child's destiny and restore hope in your family. Let's step into this faith-filled journey of hope and healing together. Do you elaborate on how you came to understand the spiritual dimension of what you experienced?
Yeah, I totally believe that it was an attack from the enemy, and I say that for a couple of reasons. One, this mental health illness doesn't sit on either side of my family. We don't have any other members of our family who have bipolar disorder, and when you hear about this specific mental health illness, typically when you meet someone who has it, someone else in their family deals with it. So that is one of the reasons I think it was an attack from the enemy. The second reason I think it was an attack from the enemy is because the darkness and the oppression that I experienced and that warfare that went on. I mean, even when I was in the hospital on all that medication, my grandpa would even tell me, he's like, you told me that you were seeing demons and all of this stuff. And take this from someone who'd never experienced any of this. It isn't that I didn't believe in this stuff. I just never personally dealt with it. So when I went through all of this, it opened me up to that spiritual world when I
Yes,
went through that mania
yes.
and all of that stuff. So I truly believe it was an attack from the enemy because of it not sitting on either side of my family and what I experienced when I went through it.
Yes. And listen, I want to back up a little because, you know, at age 18, you had a horrible bicycle accident and
Mhm.
you had been drinking and you literally wrecked and had tremendous damage and woke up in the hospital. Just touch about that, would you?
Yeah, of course. So after graduating high school, keep in mind at this time, I wasn't following the Lord. I believed in Jesus, but I wasn't a follower of Jesus. And we were on a summer vacation before everyone going to college. At this time, I didn't know what I wanted to do. All my friends were going to different colleges. I hadn't even enrolled in college. I had probably a 2.8 GPA. I didn't care about school. You would look at me and see like this person doesn't really have much of a future. And because of that, I did things like drink with my friends and just try to distract myself. That event was, I believe, a huge wake up call for me because not only did I wake up in the hospital, I had probably 42 stitches in my face, scars that you can still see on my face today that people ask me about what happened all the time. But coming back from that event, seeing my mom's face and just seeing her sadness and all the road rage that I went through and the depression that came from that, I decided to make a decision. I remember being in church with my mom with all the, scars on my face and stitches in my face and just saying like, Lord, I want to start actually following you. I want to get to know you. And I believe that painful event created a place for me to decide to make a new decision, to step into something new. And that started me on the path to starting to follow the Lord. So even the most dark, painful things that your listeners' kids might go through are sometimes the biggest wake up calls to lead us down where the Lord really wants us to go. Because that was sure it for me, even before I ever started to share my faith.
Right. And so when this terrible accident happened, and of course, you had to dig really deep on your inner man to, I mean, you looked in the mirror, you had scars, it took a lot. Now, do you think that that is what led you down to this manic episode that you had?
I don't think so because after that event happened, I soon after was in college and rededicated my life to Christ. And God started doing some amazing things in my life. And I believe He put the gift of encouragement on my life at that time, which activated so much purpose that I didn't even know that was living on the inside of me because your listeners' kids are all gifted by God with different things that He wants to use. And part of figuring that out is discovering it. But most of the discovery, in my experience, and what I believe happens for others, is in the process of surrender, saying, Lord, I can't do my life on my own. I've tried, I've failed, and I will continue to fail. And as a result of me surrendering and making that decision to start following Christ, He came and drew so near to me and showed me what He wanted me to do with my life. And I started to build and share that encouragement with everyone I knew. It activated so much purpose, and I was on fire for the Lord for 4 years before the mental health crisis came. I believe the crisis of this mental health illness came because I was susceptible. I think the enemy knew what God was doing in my life, and he came to attack me in a place where I believe God had gifted me, which was how my mind works. I can read things really quickly, I can understand things really quickly, and I believe in where we're gifted as his children is also where we get attacked. Not saying it's going to become something like it did for me, but I opened the door. And because I opened the door and didn't fight back because I didn't understand my identity in Christ, is where I believe that oppression came and it manifested itself into a full blown manic episode and mental health illness.
Well, I just, where I find such really peace in all of this and more about God than anything, Dayne, is that you were on the right path. You were seeking the Lord when this very dark moment happened. And I do believe with you that it was spiritual warfare, and
Mhm.
the enemy, found a little crack somewhere and really, just blew open the door. I have here, looking back, can you identify strategic attacks at key development moments in your life that maybe other parents could look for? Or do you think this was just a random onslaught? Do you understand what I'm asking?
I totally do. And I write about this a little bit in my book because I think this is where the enemy found a way in. And when I was developing and following the Lord and wanting to encourage everyone, I was excited. I was growing in prayer and I was reading a little bit of the word, but then I started to get kind of influenced into the personal development space. And I think that happened as a result of wanting to improve your life, right? Like I went from crashing on a bike, not knowing what I wanted to do, to starting to follow the Lord and the Lord doing great things. And then me just wanting to say, I want to use my life and make an impact on others. So I got sucked into that personal development world and started to read more personal development books than I did the Bible because the Bible for me as a young baby believer was hard to understand. And I think as I got more drawn into reading personal development books, I became obsessed with self improvement, which at its core is all about you. And I feel the enemy started to do things within that space of self improvement to make me feel like I was not enough, to make me feel like I had to keep growing and I had to do more. I had to become this and this and this, but it was all centered around me. And because of that, he got me away from the word to not understand my identity did not result as in the things that I could do and achieve and become more of being a son of the king. So I didn't understand my identity. And when all while I was so in that personal development world, trying to just improve myself and achieve and achieve and achieve, was where he came in and started to almost just like lightly show up in weird ways where I couldn't really tell. So I entertained it and opened up the door. And
Wow.
when I did open up the door, I could start feeling some of these dark spiritual attacks, but I didn't do anything. I didn't, submit to God and resist the devil because I didn't understand what that meant. And I
That's
think
right.
that's where he got his foothold in my life at that time.
Well, Dane, I think it's real important for you to kind of, if you would, describe the picture of this dark time. you shared that you just got in the car and started going to, I think it was LA. And um, could you share so parents and loved ones of these wayward children can understand it really was dark, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I will do my best to explain the like influence and then how it got to the place where it turned into mania because when I did take the car to LA, I was in a full-blown manic episode. This didn't happen immediately, but I think what first happened was the enemy was just showing up in subtle ways that I didn't understand, and it almost was like feelings and thoughts and just different stuff. But it was so subtle that I didn't know it was wrong or right. I thought it was just neutral. So I more so like entertained it. And I think as I did that, he started to get more of a foothold into my mind and then mess with my mind to the place where, at least for me, I started to become a little bit manic where my behavior was starting to be erratic and irrational, and I was sped up in my speech. So I think now that oppression was happening where the enemy was starting to really like move on my life. And then mania really took its place to that place where I felt like people were following me, starting to be delusional, starting to not even think like my family was my family, or people were watching us, or cameras were in our house. All of these things happened even before I went to LA. I had took their car one night and lost it, and they had to go find it. Like such delusion. So I was in this like we what we call it today is mania for someone who's dealing with bipolar. But really, for me, it was like deep, deep spiritual oppression and darkness. And we live in a spiritual world. And it
Yes.
eventually got to that place where I was like, I'm going to go to LA. I'm going to save people in the clubs and I'm going to become an actor and just things that had nothing to do with what I was doing at that time, and taking the car, eventually, crashing it a little bit on my way up the freeway. Like I clipped the back of my sister's car and then pulling over on the 101 and getting out of the car with all the cars zooming by on the main freeway to go to LA, and just decide like I didn't even have anything with me when I made that decision. I didn't even have shoes. I just brought my brother's Bible because it was the closest thing I could see. And then I just decided to like say I'm going to run there. So I'm like running on foot. If anyone saw this, they'd be like, this person is crazy. Like, yes,
Yes.
that is the result of what I was going through. And the cops eventually got me and took me to the hospital and, tested my blood to see what was wrong. I wasn't on drugs or anything, but it was deep delusion based on the mania I was going through, and eventually led me to the hospital where they would watch over me because I was a danger to myself and administer medication to just bring me back because I was so far gone.
Wow. Well, and then, you get this diagnosis, of bipolar, I guess is what they technically diagnosed you with. Is that right?
Yeah, I was bipolar disorder 1. So you can have bipolar disorder 1 or bipolar disorder 2. Bipolar disorder 1 is when someone has a full-blown manic episode, meaning you're delusional, you're like erratic, you have a lot of energy. Bipolar disorder 2 is where you have these like microbursts of energy, like mania, but then they lead to like super dark depression. I didn't experience that side. Bipolar disorder 2 is where a lot of people will make the decision to take their life. That's how bad it is and dark it is. But I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 1.
Okay. So you get this, you're in the hospital, I think 3 weeks. Is that right?
2 weeks.
2 weeks. And they put you on medication. I think it was three medications a day.
It was a lot. They gave me a
Oh,
cocktail at first. That's what they told my mom. They're like, we had to give your son such a cocktail just to bring him back because he was so far gone.
yeah. So tell me when I want to know y'all went to a church and you were delivered. That's the most important thing that I want parents to hear because I've seen my children delivered. So I'm all about what it is, but I love to share your perspective on this. So y'all went to church eventually. What kind of time frame later was it?
So after I got out of the hospital, I don't think my parents wanted me necessarily to like be out and about because I was still dealing with this stuff. And then maybe after a few weeks, we went and saw and found a Christian psychologist. and we wanted to find a Christian psychologist to look at this side and give us feedback too. And we actually did something called a brain map, where they put electrodes on your head and they measure the brain waves and the frequencies going on to see if your brain is balanced or not. So after we went through that process, we sat down with the psychologist, my mom and dad, and they showed me, they're like, this is a normal brain based on the theta and beta waves. And this is a brain that has like bipolar. And they're like, this is yours and it's extreme. You have like an extreme case of bipolar disorder. And I think ADHD or something that they said too. So you're going to have to take this medication, because if you don't, then your brain gets imbalanced again. You experience another manic episode. It really hurts your brain because it's imbalanced. And we don't want that to happen. We believe you can be healed, but you need to take medication. And this is probably going to be a lifelong thing. So when I heard that, it was difficult to deal with. Uh, but my mom was just so certain in her faith to say, hey, I know this is the situation right now, but we believe you can be healed. And I need you to start believing that too. So she had such faith and encouragement to me that I was like, okay, I went through all this stuff. I'm going to start believing this too. I'm going to start walking, and we're going to beat this, because we serve a great physician. And I know that he is for me and he loves me. So we're going to start walking in that wholeness and health now. I'll take the medication because medication was important for me at that time. I'm someone who's not against medication. I just didn't believe that I would have to take it for the rest of my life. I believed that through the Lord, he would heal me. And I think that's so important for anyone who's going through something like this. Like, you've got to stand in faith and believe that God is bigger than the battle you're facing, because he is, and that your identity is in him alone. That was the decision I made from that day that I got that diagnosis, where my identity was going to be sealed. Because how many times when someone gets a diagnosis is the decision then made, well, I guess this is the rest of my life and I'm just going to have to deal with it. And it creates a prison of bondage for that believer that there is a way out of. But it takes our belief in our walk of faith to start moving towards that. So because we started walking in that, because we started believing that I was going to be free from this thing, praying for it, walking in that victory, 2 weeks would go by and I was at a church service with my mom. And at the end, they just said, if anyone needs prayer, come up to the front. My mom looked over at me and she said, hey, Dayne, you should go up for prayer. And I was like, you are right. I walked right up to the front to the pastor and his wife, the same church where I rededicated my life and started following the Lord at 18. And I told them what I was going through, and they laid their hands on mine and started praying for me. And a few moments after they started praying for me, my hands started to shake uncontrollably. I knew that the Lord was going to heal me right then and there. And even the pastors like opened their eyes at that moment, like I did too, looking at me like, what is going on? So I don't know if they had any experience with seeing something like this happen. I never saw anyone healed at this church. I never saw any deliverance or anything at this church, but it just goes to show you it doesn't matter who's praying for you, right? God can show up when two believers come together and believe for him. And I even started like making weird sounds out of my mouth. And I also think this was like a reaction of that spirit of oppression,
Yes.
just going like, I don't want to leave and I'm not going to leave, because it was almost like a weird, like, laugh. And I think it freaked them out even more. But thank the Lord, they continued to pray with me and stand, because I knew that I was going to be healed. And when we got done praying, I felt a spirit lift off my body, literally like a spirit. And at that time, I was like, that oppression that was on me for the last however months I was dealing with this is gone. And I was so grateful. I remember coming up to my mom and telling her, because she was obviously away and she probably didn't see that because there was other people up there for prayer, but I knew right then and there that I was healed. And then I just decided to taper off the medication because I was in the health and fitness space. So I was like, I'll just start taking this much, this much, this much. And I think it was like a 2 week process. And it's been over 10 years. I've never had to take medication. That oppression has never returned ever, even at the slightest level since that happened. And that happened when I was 22. I'm 33 years old right now.
Wow. Wow. That is so powerful. And I want to also just touch on, that is a full-on deliverance. Thank God that we still have the power of God alive today. Miracle signs and wonders are still active. I know that is the power of the Holy Spirit, and that is just Christ moving through all of us to bring captives free, right?
Yes. Amen.
This is so amazing to me also because you've already touched on that there was no family history, right? There was no family history of bipolar, or was there?
No, there was nothing. There was no one in my family had it. That's why I truly believe it was an attack from the enemy. But also, that attack from the enemy, God was able to move so quickly. I was diagnosed and healed in the same year, in the same 4 to 6 month window, when mental health today seems to be something no one gets freedom from. And I think it's because the church does a poor job of addressing this issue because it's almost separated to be dealt with in the hospital or at a clinician's office. And there is nothing wrong with a psychiatrist and a psychologist and medication when it's needed, like it was for me. We made that decision together, but we also believed that that would not be the thing that would be the rest of my life. So all of these things are useful, but you have to have strong believers who are standing with you in faith. We had a Christian psychologist. I went to a Bible study put on by the Christian psychologist, and someone in that Bible study where we would pray told my mom, because they went to the same church as us. They were one of the elders at the church. This man told my mom, your son is going to be fine. And that probably gave her so much encouragement in a time where her faith was being challenged, because she told me too, like the enemy was whispering in her ear, like, I'm going to take your son, you know?
Wow, that is so incredible. Well, believe it or not, we're having to wrap up. I want to get this in. If you could speak right now, Dayne, directly to parents who are in the trenches, fighting the spiritual battles for their children who might be in crisis like yours, similar to you, what would you tell them?
It's such a great question. And I know that it's a lot dealing with kids. I mean, I've seen my mom go through so much, from me and my mental health stuff to my other sibling with drug addiction and just a lot of things in my family. I would say the thing that my mom did so greatly is she was there no matter what. Like, she was there for me, and all she wanted was for to make sure I was safe during a time, because she had no idea how to deal with someone who had a mental health illness. She never dealt with this before. So her faith during that time was so critical to me to hold on to faith too. And if you're a parent listening to this and you have a kid who is going through a mental health crisis, dealing with anxiety, worry, depression, sickness, drugs, whatever, you have to understand that you're not dealing with it alone. The Lord is with you, can strengthen you, can equip you. And for you to do your best to walk this out with your kid, to love on them unconditionally, to provide a place where they are safe, and to encourage and be bold in your faith about them, even if they aren't strong in their faith. Because my mom was bold in her faith. She at times would just lay her hands on me and pray for whatever I was going through. And that mattered so much. So be bold in your faith, be willing to walk this out with your kids, be patient with them, pray behind the scenes for them. That's what my mom did so much. And just create a space where you are there for them no matter what. Because I couldn't control what I was going through. And my mom didn't let that change the way in which she dealt with me. She didn't put me to the side, call me crazy. She just stood there with us, stood there with me, and believed that the Lord would move, and he did. And there is a pathway for your kids' freedom, healing, wholeness, health from anything, because we serve a great physician. That's what he did. That's what he does. And he wants your kids free, out of bondage, walking in wholeness and health. And that's available. I'm not someone special. I didn't have strong faith at that time, but I had a parent who did, and that really made the difference.
So great. So great. Listen, the enemy doesn't attack randomly. He targets your child's divine purpose with surgical precision. But as Dayne's story powerfully demonstrates, a parent armed with discernment, authority, and unwavering prayer becomes heaven's most potent weapon in the battle. Your faithful stand in the gap isn't just spiritual defense, it's prophetically shaping your child's future testimony. The crisis you're navigating today, man, it could be the very foundation of the most powerful ministry tomorrow. Keep fighting, mom and dad. What looks like defeat is often the doorway to destiny. And Dayne, you are amazing. We thank you so much for your vulnerability and for sharing this dark season And a lot of people just aren't willing to do that. And I really do thank you for that, because I know it's going to help so many parents. Real quickly, remind us in this episode where we can contact you or how we can support you um, in all that you do.
Of course. And thank you so much, Laine, for having me on and giving me a place to speak about this, because I think even one person who's going through something similar, all they need to hear is a story of someone who's been through it to give them the faith to believe that God can do it again, because that's what he wants to do. But if you guys want to connect, I think the easiest way is just social media, Lit with Prayer, LITWITH prayer. We're on there. We do Bible study live streams, praying, and all of that kind of stuff.
Wow. Well, thank you again. And listen, this is Warfare Parenting. We are faith-driven strategies to help you with your teen and adult children that listen, Dayne, we're here to say the battle is real, isn't it? This spiritual battle over our children is truly real,
It sure is.
but we do have the victory, right?
Amen.
Amen. Thank you again, Dayne.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us on Warfare Parenting. Remember, you can overcome even the most challenging parenting battles with faith and the right strategies. If this episode has touched your heart or provided valuable insights, please subscribe to our podcast and leave a review. Your support helps other struggling parents find the hope and guidance they need. Until next time, remain steadfast in faith, and remember, together we never give up on our families. Visit my website too for my new book, Warfare Parenting, a daily battle plan to fight for your child. The first 10 days are free on my website and many other free resources. Go to LaineLawsonCraft.com.